guys, welcome back to our channel. I'm Jen.
And I'm Kat.
And today we have a really spooky video planned for you guys. We love reading scary stories and scaring ourselves, so we thought it would be fun to find some of the scariest stories on the internet and retell them to you guys, but with a twist. So some of these stories are going to be real and some of them are going to be fiction, and we're not going to tell you guys until the end of the video. So leave some comments down below as to which ones you guys think are real, which one you guys think are fake. You definitely will be shocked. Some of them are really, really scary and creepy. So grab some popcorn or your favorite snack and let's just get into it. Alright guys, our first story is super creepy and honestly gave me so many goosebumps when I was reading it. It's about a mother and daughter, Jamie and Michelle, who just recently moved into a new home after a really exhausting divorce with her ex-husband. And the home was a little bit older, so it did need a lot of work, but they were both really excited to just start over and start a new life and have their own place. So after moving in, Jamie decided to get a quick start on all of the renovations. She started painting and she really just spent most of her time doing that. Now her daughter was about 6 years old, so she was just upstairs playing most of the time while Jamie was making these renovations. So one day Jamie is painting the living room and she basically hears her daughter playing upstairs, enjoying her time, and Jamie's just, making a lot of progress with her renovations. And she hears her daughter come downstairs and hears her in the kitchen, like rummaging through the fridge, grabbing snacks, and she thinks, okay, maybe she's hungry. So she calls out to her and asks, Michelle, do you want something to eat? Do you want me to make something for you? To which Michelle replies and says, yes, Mom, I want chicken nuggets. So Jamie wraps up what she's doing and she goes in the kitchen and she notices that Michelle is not there and she actually hears her back upstairs playing. So she didn't really think much of it at this time and just continued making the chicken nuggets and gave them to her. So she didn't really put much thought into what happened and thought maybe she just had ran off and went back to playing. But the more time they spent in the house, she started noticing a lot of weird things started happening. So she started hearing several noises throughout the house. Sometimes she would hear her daughter call her, she would hear her playing, and she would always just find that her daughter wouldn't have called her, her daughter wouldn't be in the room that she thought she was in. So she just started noticing weird things like that kind of just blew it off. Until one day, her daughter was already dropped off at school, and she can hear her playing in her playroom upstairs. She heard her playing with a doll, she heard her talking, she heard her laughing. And she went upstairs to only find the room completely empty, nothing in there. So she obviously got really creeped out and started to think that maybe something was going on in the house. And she wasn't sure if it was that or maybe it was because of the divorce. She thought maybe that was taking a psychological toll on her and maybe she was just hearing things. I mean, we all know that stress can sometimes cause, us to imagine things that are really weird. So she wasn't really too sure at this point, but she was definitely really creeped out. So the following weekend, her ex-husband came to pick up Michelle so that they can spend the weekend together. And Jamie was going to be alone in the house the entire weekend. And normally she would be excited because she has her own alone time. She can really just get a bunch of things done in the house. But she was honestly a little bit anxious and nervous to be alone in the house because of just all the things that were happening. So surprisingly, the weekend went pretty well. Nothing really happened. There was no occurrences, and Sunday finally rolled around. So on Sunday, Jamie was finishing up her renovations, and it was only about lunchtime at this time when she could hear the front door open, and she heard what sounded like her husband and daughter walking in. They were like mid-conversation and laughing, and she immediately froze because one, they did not have a key to get back in the house. And two, they weren't supposed to be back until about like 6 o'clock or much later in the day. So she immediately knew that something was off, and she just knew in her gut that if she went downstairs, no one was going to be there. So she ends up going downstairs, and of course she was right. Nobody was there. So she was completely terrified at this point and basically sat outside on her front steps for the entire day until they came home. So she had wanted nothing to do with the house at all. So finally 6 o'clock comes around and Michelle's father drops her home, and Jamie basically brings her inside, and they're at the end of their stairs in their house, and she's just gathering her things together, and Michelle is telling her mom about what her and her father did during the weekend and how much fun she had, when out of nowhere, what sounded like the voice of Jamie called out from upstairs to Michelle's door. And they both immediately froze, and Michelle just looked up at her mom, extremely confused. And now this basically just confirmed for Jamie that she was not making this up. It was not in her head. She was not going crazy, because someone else finally heard it. So she said to her daughter, "Oh my gosh, you heard it too." So she immediately just grabs her arm. They literally leave all of their belongings and just run out of the house. So now after this, they unfortunately ended up reselling their home and moving into an apartment. And luckily though, there has been no other occurrences. So super, super scary, guys. I mean, this one totally creeped me out.
Okay guys, so our next story is super freaky. I thought this story was crazy when I first read it. So it's about a mother and a son. So there was a mother and a son. It was a beautiful day at the ski resort, and they loved going there together. So basically what happened was the mother had planned to spend this amazing day with her son at the ski resort, and they were making their way down the slope, and a thick fog rose up, and the visibility became really poor. They were skiing, and they really could not even see what was in front of them. So eventually they became separated. So the mother was frantically searching for her son. She was looking everywhere, and her name was Lola. So Lola basically couldn't find her son, and she pretty much went missing. Later on, a local lift operator was returning to his cabin. He actually found her body, and she was barely holding on for life. She was pretty much near dead. Like, people thought she was dead when they found her, or when the local lift operator found her. They thought she was dead already, but she was still barely holding on. She was whispering her son's name over and over again. So he was freaking out and he panicked, but he took her back to his cabin, and he was trying to bandage her up as best as he could. And he stepped out to try to find a doctor. And eventually, when he was able to find one, he found that when they returned to the cabin, she was gone, pretty much. Like, the bed was covered with blood from all of her wounds, but her body was physically no longer there. So they pretty much never found her again. They never found her son, and locals and the lift operator state that they sometimes hear her still calling out for her son.
Okay. Our next story is about a girl named Wendy who is obsessed with her cat Precious. She takes this cat everywhere with her. She plays with her. She talks to her. She pretty much treats the cat like a human. Like, you never see Wendy without her cat. And sadly, one day the cat is tragically hit by a car and passes away. And Wendy is just completely distraught. She's not able to accept the fact that her cat passed, and actually won't even acknowledge that it had died. She continues to act like the cat is completely alive, feeding the cat, giving it water, playing with the cat. Her parents can hear her talking to the cat or talking about the cat and acting like it's alive. And they just feel like this is completely unhealthy for her, that she's not able to process her grief. And they decide to get a child psychologist to come to the house and try and spend some time with Wendy to see if he can kind of convince her or help her process the grief of losing her best friend. So the psychologist ends up spending a lot of time with her, and he starts noticing some weird things. He notices that Wendy will still feed the cat and give the cat water, but after about a couple of hours, the food in the bowl will be gone, the water will look like it was drank, and the furniture will have fresh scratches as if someone had scratched the furniture. So he thinks at this point that Wendy has taken this to a whole nother level and trying to convince everyone and herself that the cat is still alive. So in a last straw to just prove it to her that the cat is no longer with them, he tells her to hold up the cat Precious, and he'll take a picture of her with the cat. So this took place back in the day, and he had to take the camera to get developed, so he had to actually print out the pictures. So after the film got developed, they would start looking through the photos, and so crazy, in the photo she's actually holding her cat. So no one was able to explain this, and Wendy basically just said, I told you guys the cat was still there. So super crazy.
Okay, guys, so our next story is about a man named George who inherits the family fortune. George is kind of, he has a kind of interesting character. He really loves money, and he's put in this position when his father passes. Basically, he inherits money and he searches the world for priceless relics. One day, his lawyer decides to sell him a 300-year-old chair. She tells him that she believes the chair is cursed, but George, typical skeptic George, doesn't believe that the chair is cursed. He keeps the chair in his house, and one day George's maid Jenny decides to sit on the chair. He gets angry at Jenny, not because he believes the chair is haunted or anything, but because he thinks that she's a maid, she shouldn't be sitting on his priceless relics. It was very expensive. It's like a 300-year-old chair. She could have damaged it, and so on and so forth. But shortly after sitting on the chair, about a week later, George finds out that Jenny actually, unfortunately, was killed in a hit and run by a drunk driver. George is a little bit weirded out, but he doesn't really think it has anything to do with the chair. He's just like, oh, it was just a terrible accident. Later on, though, George's friend Eric comes over and he wants to sit in the chair. George kind of objects, but Eric persists and he sits in the chair anyway. Of course, neither George or Eric think anything is going to happen, but then eventually Eric dies piloting a plane to New York. Wow, that's crazy. After this, George decides to contact his lawyer to see if she could find any information on the previous owner of the chair. So over the next month, George also starts to feel ill. He loses a bunch of clients and he starts losing business, and it brings him to unfortunately file for bankruptcy. Later that night, George decides to destroy the chair with an axe. So he comes home with an axe in hand and tries to destroy the chair, but before that, he is unfortunately struck by a heart attack and he dies. Crazy.
Okay guys, so now we're gonna go through each story and let you guys know which one was real and which one was fake. So we'll see if you guys guessed right. So our first story was called The Mimic, and this one was fake. So this was actually a story that we created. It's a Jen and Kat original. It's super, super creepy, but it was all fictional. It is actually based on a mythological creature called the Mimic. So there is legend behind it. And basically a mimic is a type of entity that can mimic or replicate a voice that it hears. So really, really eerie and like creepy.
When I first heard like there's so many mimic stories on the internet that you can find on so many websites, and whenever I hear any story about that, it's extremely creepy to me that like someone can imitate someone that you love and you're just like, you think that's them, and I don't know. It's just crazy to me.
I would have been so scared when we were writing this. We were creeping ourselves out.
We're literally scared.
I'm like, why are we scared? We know what's happening. Like, we're writing this.
Yeah.
But if you want some more information, there actually is a house in Ohio. It's called the Mimic House. And this is where this story kind of originated from. It's a haunted house where they had lots of experience with this so-called mimic. And there's actually an episode on a show called The Haunted, or The Haunting.
I think The Haunting
on Netflix. Haunting on Netflix. And it's the first episode of season 2. It's really, really scary.
Yeah.
I started watching it and I shut it off. It's so scary, guys, but if you're into that stuff, definitely check it out because it's pretty interesting. But yeah, story 1 was fake.
Alright guys, so story 2 was actually true. It's actually called The Haunting of the La Parva Ski Resort. So this story took place at the La Parva Ski Resort in the Chilean Andes. The wailing woman, her name was Lola, and everyone who works there, people who like have lived around that area, they all swear that they know who she is. Like, she was 100% a real person. A local restaurant owner said that he dated her, and a pro skier actually said that the ski patroller he heard the story from pointed out to the exact hut that he had taken her to.
Oh my god.
Yeah, crazy guys. That's so creepy.
Any type of story with like a wailing woman,
I know, like, I don't know, it's just like, it's like crazy because they even say like, oh, they still hear her sometimes like wailing, like looking for her son, and I'm guessing the son's body was never found.
Okay, so story 3, our story about the cat brushes. You guys, you're about to be mind blown. It was true. So,
oh my God.
yeah, it's based on an incident. It's literally so crazy, but it's based on an incident that happened in Paris, I believe, in the 1950s. And they really were not able to explain how this cat appeared in the film. And I mean, back then we had disposable cameras and things, now we have digital, so it was actually very hard to alter any type of those
how would you
photos.
even fake that?
Yeah, films, it wasn't like how it is today, guys. Like, Photoshop did not exist. And yeah, so they thought that maybe it was like older pictures in the camera that got developed, but then the psychologist was like, okay, well then where are the pictures that I took? So super, super scary. This one was just like, ooh, gave me like the heebie-jeebies, like so creepy.
Crazy. All right, guys. So now on to our last story. This story is actually true. So this story is called The Hooded Chair. It took place in Washington, D.C. So George's lawyer actually gave him a list of owners who had, owned the chair beforehand, since it was a 300-year-old chair. He also gave a portrait, I think, of Napoleon Bonaparte sitting in the chair in 1815.
That is crazy.
Yeah, which I'm all for history, but I feel like that's the wrong kind of history.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was apparently the portrait of Napoleon was created around the same time as the Battle of Waterloo. So they believe the chair is cursed due to the circumstances surrounding, I guess, the chair and like Napoleon and all of those things. So yeah, crazy.
That is insane.
Yeah,
and
I can't believe it.
There's so many museums, I feel like, where they're like, oh, haunted museums, you could sit in this chair or look in this mirror and something will happen to you, or say hi to this doll. And the people that do that, I'm just like,
I know, I don't know, I feel like I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in the same room as the chair. I am not.
No, crazy.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just I'd be too scared to bring something home with me, or something follows you. I don't know. I believe that stuff does happen. Yeah, it would happen to me.
Would you guys sit in a chair? Let us know.
Alright guys, so that's all we have for today. We really hope you guys enjoyed the video and we didn't scare you too bad with these stories. Be sure to comment below which stories you thought were real and which ones you thought were fake, immediately. And we also hope you guys like the video and subscribe. We really do appreciate all of you for watching our video, and we'll see you next time. Bye guys.